And we're live. What's up, everybody? Thank you for joining us today. We're going to have Tal Hagen joining us in just a moment, come in with an analysis of the situation. In 30 or so minutes, Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, is meant to make a speech. Many are anticipating this will be a declaration of war on Israel, which will be a major, major escalation of things. Before we get into it, just real quick, a shout out to our Patreon visionary members. uh, Renee Gordon. If anybody watching this wants to support the show, you could find ways to do so in the description, whether by becoming a patron, become a member here on YouTube, or you could also just reach out if you want to support in ways that aren't financial. We could always use more support, and we already have at least 7 volunteers helping us, and that's really what allows us to do more of this content, more of these streams, with the goal of not only giving people, you know, uh, as balanced a view as possible on what's going on, and also to continue to aid in the reconciliation process between Israelis and Palestinians and people in conflict in general. Um, so Todd's going to come on and give us a much more in-depth analysis of everything going on. He should be joining us any minute, but in 30 or so minutes, Hassan Nasrallah will be making a speech. If it's not a declaration of war on Israel, it is interesting what it might be. Tal might have some other ideas. Does anybody know where actually this speech is going to be streamed? I started looking, but haven't found it yet. So maybe chat can help. Also, let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. Um, and yeah, whoever finds where the speech will be streamed to, um, we'll give them a very special shout out. Cool. We have Tal here. Tal, bro. Wait, there we go. What's up, brother?
Hey, good to see you.
We were bringing each other on at the same time, so you kept coming on and bouncing off. Um, Real quick, Tal, before you give your analysis, do you know where we could watch the speech live?
Um, Most likely a foreign news. I heard reports that a lot of Israeli channels won't, but we'll see. I'm gonna look around.
Well, do you want to give an analysis, and in the meantime, I can look around?
Yeah, so it's more that the real question regarding the speech is what exactly is going to be said. Like, are they going to be actually joining the fight against the state of Israel on a much larger scale, or are they going to downsize, or are they just trying to rally support behind the Palestinians and Al Qassam brigades in Gaza? Um, my current analysis is that it seems that the route that many of these groups have made, and this is directly due to the influence of Iran, is the use of proxies to put pressure on the state of Israel. One, to go forward with a ceasefire and to stop its invasion into Gaza. There's a few reasons why they want this outcome, but it's also important to understand the direction that they've taken. The use of proxies is not, it's not a uncommon usage of militaries. I mean, we know that every single major military force has used proxies. The Americans, the Russians, Iran. We know that Israel's used proxies. Basically, just so people who are listening know what a proxy is, it's essentially a military for hire. It's individuals that either you give them money, like mercenaries, that you just pay them to fight for you, or you give them financial and political support. So essentially, think of it like a type of friendship where if you help us in our fight against this country, then we'll supply you with arms and funding and political support again for your fight in your own place. So the Houthis in Yemen want to control Yemen, so they are against the current government that's established in Yemen, and so Iran backs them and provides them with military support and financial support in order to fight against the Yemen government. And in exchange, when Iran needs additional support for regarding the Israel, so they are now using the Houthis to help attack the state of Israel. We're also seeing this with I forgot the name of the group, the militia group operating within Iraq. This is a group in Iraq that is affiliated also with Iran, and it wants to remove Western influence from Iraq and instead have it influenced by Iran. And so now they're also have been claiming to have fired missiles at Israel. They claim that they hit a site near the Dead Sea, but Israeli media hasn't reported on this, so either it's not being reported or it never actually hit, and this was simply propaganda. We don't know right now. And Hezbollah is essentially the largest and most direct force, proxy force of the of Iran, and so right now it seems that Hamas didn't get the support I think that they thought they would get from militant groups within the center of Israel. They very much called for a day of rage just a week after the initial attack on October 7th, and that didn't happen, which I was also surprised by. Palestinian militant groups have expanded their operation capabilities and have amassed greatly in the West Bank over the past few years. They've actually been able to fend off IDF incursions into the cities. They've been able to inflict casualties and very much be much more organized. And so I personally expected there to be a lot more attacks from the West Bank on the Day of Rage on that Friday, but that didn't happen. There were some attacks, but relatively for what Hamas expected, I would say they were quite insignificant. And also, I think that Israel, after about a week, it knew probably that this was going to happen, and so the IDF began to arrest. Most of the arrests that you're currently seeing going on in the West Bank, they're Hamas-affiliated individuals, people who are affiliated with the Hamas, are affiliated with different organizations, and kind of to preemptively stop them from getting more and more support and to have a growing military resistance in the West Bank. And so we didn't see that. Regarding the world stage, while a lot of people have come out, a lot of different countries have come out very strongly against Israel and more in support of Gaza and for a ceasefire, there hasn't actually been much military support for Hamas. We have seen humanitarian aid come in from multiple different countries. One of the most significant was Russia, that recently just gave humanitarian aid to Gaza through the Rafah border, but not really military. The only military incursions that have been tried against the state of Israel up until now have been by proxies of Iran, which is also significant. I would say that the Houthis and those in Iraq, I forgot their name, if someone can write in the chat, I don't see them as really a significant threat to the state of Israel, but Hezbollah definitely plays a much different place in this. We know that based on the fact that Israeli military generals over the past few years have constantly said that any war raged against the state of Israel will result in essentially southern Lebanon being wiped out. And we're talking about like a total elimination of the area of southern Lebanon to eliminate any threat by Hezbollah. And I think that the fact that these threats keep on coming up over the past few years showcases that Hezbollah is a serious threat to the state of Israel, at least in the short term. I don't believe that Hezbollah has the capabilities to, really put Israel into a status of survival, but it can definitely inflict a very, very large number of casualties in a very short amount of time. Hezbollah, due to the way that a lot of the shipments from weapons enter Lebanon, we know some of it is from cargo, some of it is from planes, some of it is by trucks that come through Syria. A lot of the airstrikes that you hear about the IDF that are occurring within Syria are related to that. They're related to stopping different shipments and different intelligence units and stuff like that coming from Iran. We know this from a number of different sources. And also, Iran is stated as such that they constantly supply Hezbollah with weapons. And so those are the only ways that they can actually get these weapons in. And so I think that the speech today, it is significant, but we do know in the past that these different groups have rallied up a lot of support for these speeches to occur, but then didn't actually produce anything. Like nothing actually happened. Right at the beginning, Al-Qassam brigades, the military wing of Hamas, they came out with very big statements about what they were going to do next, and then nothing really happened. This is after the October 7th. And also sometimes they make big claims. Like, for example, very early on, I think it was on the second or third day, the Al-Qassam brigades stated that they were going to start taking videos of them executing the hostages like every hour. And that never happened. They never did it. At least to our knowledge, there was never any videos uploaded of them killing the hostages. There was one video that was uploaded that appears to showcase two prisoners being executed in the back of the head. I remember seeing this video, but it disappeared really fast. Like, I don't even know if anyone was able to download the video. It was up for like 5 minutes and then it was gone. And I think that just from a narrative standpoint, it doesn't look good if you're executing hostages, especially if they're civilians. And so I think
Right.
that that tactic was abandoned very early on.
I think there's a trade-off, right? Like if you're going to be executing hostages, then it definitely puts pressure on Israel to do something about it. But then you're losing the PR war internationally, which both Israel and Hamas are fighting heavily to win. Um, so I think they decided that it's better to stay on good terms with the international community. Um, because at least for the first few days after the massacre, definitely sympathy was with Israel. But and we said this on the first stream the night of or the morning of the massacre. I think someone said that for the first time, sympathy will be on Israel's side, and I remember saying only for a few days. Once enough Palestinian children are killed, then it's gonna reverse, and that's surely what happened. Um, but okay, I guess we I guess we'll see what happens now.
He's going to say there's going to be something. I mean, you don't wait almost 3 weeks to finally make an official announcement and not do anything. But I think it's also important for people who are watching to realize that Lebanon has been active this entire time. They've been different, mainly in the beginning it was Sayara al-Quds, which is the military wing of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, were firing a lot of rockets into Israel from Lebanon and also anti-tank missiles. But then Hezbollah started joining in and actually taking responsibility for attacks against Israel, which is not usually the case. Usually they allow the Palestinian groups in its territory to take responsibility and not themselves, but they have been taking direct responsibilities for attacks. There's also, I think, been the death of at least 9 to 15 soldiers on the border up until now, and that hasn't been talked about almost at all in Israeli media. And I think a lot of the reason for that is that we don't want an escalation on the north.
Not 9 to 15,
9 to 15 soldiers confirmed that are dead.
Israeli soldiers.
Yeah, Israeli soldiers. Sorry, Israeli soldiers. I think it's roughly 55 Hezbollah militants were killed that they've claimed up until now. I think need to get the exact numbers. Just a quick clarification, because I've already made 2 posts on this on Twitter, but people keep on sharing it. They keep on saying that Hezbollah claimed that they killed 120 soldiers. That's not what they claimed. And it's really annoying that people just don't do very basic research, which is just to read the announcement that Hezbollah said. They said that they killed and injured 120 soldiers, which is very, very significant, because a few reasons why you say that is, one, because it's not always easy to tell whether or not you've killed the enemy. It's not like a video game where you shoot them and you have a caption come up saying you just killed this enemy. Sometimes you never even see the enemy that you're fighting. You just know that there's enemies in the general direction and you fire at them. By saying, so you say killed and wounded because they know that they've either wounded or killed at least 120 soldiers that they fired at. But also it's good for propaganda. Because when you say 120 soldiers either killed or wounded, I mean, technically it could be 1 soldier and 119 were injured, and which is not the same as saying 120 killed or injured. And so part of that is from propaganda purposes, but it also has to do with the fact that it's not always easy to know whether or not those soldiers were killed. Also, the IDF, in terms of, we've seen Hamas in the past few days, they've been taking responsibility for the deaths of a number of soldiers, sometimes like multiple at once. They're saying dozens, but then we get the numbers coming out. But it's hard to know whether or not the official numbers coming out from Gaza are from the same event. They've been quite vague about how a lot of these soldiers were killed. And that's mainly due to the fact that the IDF can't release the name of the soldiers to the public until the family has been there, notified. But that kind of like subsequently, as a consequence, allows for a delayed response. So instead of suddenly at one time you have 20 soldiers that are reported to have been killed, which most likely means they were all killed in one instance, it reports essentially that it happened over a course of a number of days, which is reasonable. That's going to happen during a war, that you're going to lose soldiers. And so it's kind of like this fight between the narratives of being victorious and how many we've managed to kill on the other side. I think something that is important to note is that Hamas has not taken responsibility, I think, for any of its militants being killed since the beginning of October 7th, even though we already have multiple footage of Hamas operatives, militants on the fence being killed by IDF soldiers and also by people who took their personal firearms and shot at the militants, both from security cameras and also from the militant body cams of those being shot. But they haven't taken responsibility for any of their deaths. And so a lot of this has to do with propaganda in terms of showing resilience. You see the death counts of the Israeli soldiers and Israeli civilians, but you don't see any of our side of the Hamas militants. And so I don't know if we'll ever see those lists. They don't usually almost ever put the full list of people.
Really, all we know is what Israel's saying, and they say so far, like since we've gone into Gaza, like I think a few hundred Hamas soldiers have been killed, but we really don't know if those numbers are.
Yeah, I saw a number running around online of I think it was 20% of Hamas operatives have been killed. But I just saw that there was no source for that. Like I just saw it running around on different Twitters, but I didn't see a source for that at all.
Right.
And also, it's really hard to like. How do you know it's 20%? It's a very weird thing to put a percentage on that.
Yeah.
Because also, unlike a military, like for example, like the IDF, a proper modern military where you have names and lists. I mean, Hamas, while it is a government, there are militant groups. You can have people who simply join in and they decide to fight for Hamas during certain periods. Like it's from as far as I'm aware, there's not like a very much a proper list of people who are serving for Hamas.
What we could know for sure is that in times of war, both sides are full of shit and should not be believed.
Yeah, I think it's not.
That's a real thing.
You have to be careful. I think that's what I also said in one of my posts, that you need to really be careful with these things coming out, these numbers. Also, for example, the videos of that Al-Qassam brigades released of them destroying tanks, and like everyone posting that video is like, look at them destroy a tank. We don't actually see a tank destroyed. Right. I think it's important to realize, like, we know that tanks were hit, and there's a good chance that the famous video, I guess you could call, of the where the guy puts a Yasin 105 RPG on the tank and then another RPG that most likely was hit and badly damaged. Also, we know at least one armored vehicle was hit, and there were 7 casualties from that hit. But again, we don't know, for example, was it open? Were they shot from the back when they just opened the door? Were they just standing outside the armored vehicle and then hit? Did they actually completely destroy the vehicle itself? We don't know. And so all we can tell from these videos is we know that that they have been operating against armored vehicles and they have been successful in hitting them. We don't know if they've actually destroyed them in any of these videos. They never actually show the ending. They kind of just show a blast, but a blast could be anything. I mean, I've seen incredible videos from Ukraine with both tanks like firing at each other, and you see a massive explosion, and then the tank just like goes away and doesn't even look like it was hurt.
Tanks are not that easy to blow up, right?
No, they're especially the very heavily armored ones like Namer, the heavy carriers.
Yeah.
But it is weird. Like, for example, something I was very surprised about was in that video of the Al-Qassam fighter coming up to the tank, is like there's no infantry around that vehicle. Like, it was completely exposed from its side.
Right, which is interesting because normally they're right.
Well, they're supposed to be supported by infantry. Like, a tank is pretty easy to kill if it's completely on its own.
Right.
Because it can't. I mean, there's only a limit how much it can actually, see at one point. And so it's supposed to be supported by people like 360, but it seems like it wasn't. And so that is, for example, showcasing a fault with the current operation. Something I was very surprised about, I spoke to this about this with a few friends of mine, is that Hamas obviously learned from the war in Ukraine in terms of the type of tactic that they're using, placing RPGs and grenades on drones and flying them over, using the suicide drones. We know that Hezbollah took responsibility for 2 Shahid drones, the same drones that we've been seeing Russia fire at Ukraine. These very massive, they look like a big triangle. They're called Shahid, and they're Iranian. Hezbollah fired 2 of them. They're very effective. Like, they're kind of like a directed missile, but a drone. But we've seen Hezbollah. I mean, the fact that I saw a video of Hamas having a drone just go right over the soldiers and just drop a grenade on them. Right, amazing. Yeah. It missed. Like, it hit the side and it didn't kill any of them, from what I saw in the video. And also the
report claimed that it killed 7, but again, that's
not just that's the vehicle that it killed 7. This is I'm talking about.
It wasn't a real report. It was like it was propaganda saying 7 Israelis killed from drone attack, but that just they counted 7 people were touched by it.
Yeah. So according to reports I saw from the IDF, there was no one killed in that instance. Also, we see, if anything, it looks like only 1 or 2 might have been injured from that based on where it hit. But the fact that you had IDF soldiers just out in the open, just sitting like on the outskirts, with no defense against drones showcases like a lack of understanding of the dynamics of the war now. I mean, this is obvious tactics that were going to be used as a result of what we saw in Ukraine. They've been incredibly effective. I mean, Russian and Ukrainian units have managed to take out entire armored vehicles just using these drones. We've seen vehicles being taken out by like very small drones with grenades attached to them. Like, it's incredible.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem that there's been a understanding of that.
Yeah, but you know what is interesting? So in 2014, that's the last time the IDF entered Gaza with ground troops, and we only entered the outskirts, and I think it was like 80 soldiers were killed just entering the outskirts, and now we're already in a situation where we have Gaza City fully surrounded with only 20 soldiers killed. So it seems like uh, even with these new tactics, it seems like the IDF has been much more effective this time in their ground operation than they were last time. And I don't know if that's attributed to just
I think it's also how they went in. They didn't just go straight in. I think that was also something that the Hamas was hoping for, is that the IDF, would go straight into Gaza right after the massacre on October 7th, and they would have been completely ready to take on.
Right, it's that they weakened them with such heavy aerial bombardment.
They completely destroyed almost every single neighborhood that was near the border. Has been completely obliterated. Like, they learned from 2014, and I think they kind of understood what Hamas was waiting for. And we are seeing those same tactics. I mean, we see them come out of these tiny little holes, come out, shoot 2 rockets, and go back into the hole. I mean, there's a huge network there in northern Gaza.
Right. So this is like an interesting analysis, but supposedly most of Hamas they're underground right now, right? They're in tunnels, and they have it gives them this ability to kind of move around unseen and pop out in different areas. And going into the tunnels to fight is extremely deadly. It's not something that I don't think we have an intention to do that. But there's always the option to just blow up the tunnels. The thing is, it seems like that's where the hostages are being held as well. So it seems like Israel now has a little bit of a dilemma. It's like, do we go into the tunnels and try to fight in the tunnels, or blow them up and just let the hostages die with Hamas fighters? So it's unclear really what is gonna happen. I also heard, and Tal, have you heard this confirmed? But supposedly Hamas is offering to release hostages in exchange for fuel. Have you heard that?
I've heard that claim. I haven't seen it officially in the channels that I've been following. Yeah. The main claim I know that they've been repeating since the beginning is the release of all the Israeli hostages and for all the Palestinian prisoners. Palestinian prisoners includes everything from individuals who were convicted of murder to people who have been taken into custody without a proper trial.
I think we should do it.
So the thing is that let's just say if Israel goes that route, we need to understand a few things. One, this doesn't happen in a day. You don't release 6,000 people and get 244, I think, hostages just in one day. This is something that would take time to develop, and in the meantime, you would have to have a ceasefire in order to not destabilize the situation further. What this would allow is for Hamas to build up its capabilities once again. It would give Israel, essentially, it would make Israel look horrible again. I mean, you would have essentially a total Hamas victory, in not only causing horrific damage to the IDF's image, just in terms of its strength and abilities, but also you've weakened Israeli society's trust in its military and in its government. In addition to this, you've succeeded in releasing 6,000 prisoners, and due to the fact that this also includes individuals who are responsible for attacks against civilians, you also incentivize people to then continue these attacks against civilians and military targets later on, because they'll know that eventually they'll be released from a prisoner swap. Long term, this only causes more issues for Israel, and we'll see this happen again in 5-10 years.
It's certainly a challenging decision to make. I would say that if Israel's, first of all, they're not asking to be released into Gaza; they're asking to be released elsewhere.
There's a reason for that, because then we would just bomb them the second we release them.
Right, exactly. But that also means that they pose less of a threat if they're not in Gaza, if they're just elsewhere. But if our intention is, and according to every Israeli officials, um, we're gonna defeat Hamas, right? That's the narrative. Whether that will happen or not, time will tell. But according to what everybody is saying, we're not going to stop until Hamas is defeated. If that's the case, these prisoners that are released won't really make much of a difference if Hamas is destroyed, and if they're defeated and somebody else takes control over Gaza, those 6,000 are not going to have the ability to retake Gaza and rebuild Hamas. So, you know, doing that and saving 220 Israeli civilians, well, civilians plus soldiers. Obviously it's a challenging decision, but I think it's probably worth it. Alien Abel asks, "What's the Hannibal Directive?" So the Hannibal Directive is is a military policy that if somebody is kidnapped, um, it's okay to kill them if you're gonna kill the terrorists taking them. So let's say, for example, you see somebody kidnapped and taken into a building, you could blow up that building. That's the Hannibal Directive, and that was implemented after Gilad Shalit was kidnapped and released because hostages. I think Israel decided that hostages are worse than dead civilians and dead soldiers. Someone's asking, where can we watch the announcement with English subtitles? Yeah, so we're not quite sure. I have Al Jazeera open right now,
I also do,
but I don't know if it's going to have English subtitles. But do we have an Arabic speaker that wants to hop on stream and do a live translation for us? Because that'd be cool. Any takers? Say I, and I will send you a link in the chat to join. Right? You'd imagine it would be on Al Jazeera, but will they give a live translation?
I mean, I'm looking on the Al Jazeera English, assuming they will, but we'll see.
No, another thing is we see people like rooting, they're saying they want Hezbollah to join, they're excited about it. These were the same people that cheered on the massacres on October 7th. But these voices are also the loudest in condemnation when Israel strikes back. So a lot of the people that are hoping Hezbollah joins are going to be condemning Israel for their retaliation, which is like, it's important to understand, like, more you need to look more than just one step. Like there's such a thing as cause and effect. And I was, October 7th, I was talking to Palestinian friends and tell them how it gave them hope and they were excited by it. And for the first time they thought that maybe Israel could be defeated. And I told them, I'm like, are you not sad by how many Palestinians are going to be killed now? Like, it seems like such a short-sighted way to see things, to not understand the result of certain actions. Like, why are you cheering for more death and destruction?
Okay, Al Jazeera, it's weirdly enough doesn't look like it's showing it. I'm surprised.
Maybe there's some like Lebanon news.
Yeah. I'm trying to look for it now.
LebanonNewsNetwork.com. How do I know that'd be a site? Is it a popular one? I'm not sure. Well, if we can't watch it live, we're definitely going to just get reports on it very soon, and or we might know by air raid.
Other means. Wait,
Yeah,
someone said Sky
exactly.
News.
Air raid sirens is going to be. And here's the thing. It does seem like Hamas is weakened because there hasn't been sirens in Tel Aviv for the past 48 hours, which is a change from the past.
No, Sky News isn't playing it.
I'm not seeing that Sky News. But you think if they're declaring war, that declaration comes with a massive missile attack. And here's an interesting way to look at things, right? Like, there's a siege on Gaza, and the siege on Gaza is certainly a form of collective punishment, and people view that as just inherently cruel. Like, why would Israel put a siege on Gaza? So if we look at the difference between Hamas's capabilities to strike Israel and Hezbollah's ability to strike Israel, they have vastly different capabilities, and that can be summed up to the fact that Gaza is under siege and Lebanon isn't. When you have free range to import things and build, it allows you to build much stronger weapons. So the reason why Gaza is under siege, it doesn't come out of like malice. It's not that Israel or Israelis want to see Gazans suffer. It's that we don't want Hamas to have the strongest weapons possible. And seeing the difference between Hamas's capabilities and Hezbollah's capabilities is just a clear indicator of what how a siege can actually slow down some forces' ability to strike. It's on Sky News, but not on the main news. So what does that mean?
It's on the news, but it's not on the news. Here, I'm in
So
a
John says,
Hezbollah. I'm in the Hezbollah Telegram. Let me see if they're talking about it.
so Josh, I see you saying one attack with a couple hundred casualties and hostages does not warrant 200,000 homes, 45 schools destroyed. So, right, it seems like this is not a proportionate response, but that's not enough, right? What do you suggest an alternative is? And this is really, if you want more people to support a ceasefire, because the whole world could yell ceasefire, but it needs to be Israel and Israelis that are convinced by a ceasefire. Um, so what do we tell Israelis? And help me, if you want a ceasefire, because I do want to see the bloodshed end. It is horrible what's happening. But what do we tell Israelis an alternative to destroying Hamas is? Just say, okay, you know what? Just massacre over 1,000 people and all good, you know. So we'll kill 1,000 of your people and we'll do this all again in a few years. No, the intention is not. It's not to retaliate. So there's 10 or 100-fold uh, response in terms of casualties. It's to create a situation where this can't happen again, right? So the goal is not to inflict as much civilian death. It's to ensure a situation where this doesn't happen again in a few years. So what other route can we take so this doesn't happen again in a few years? And I'm not saying there isn't another route, but there's certainly a lack of understanding of what that route looks like.
Yeah, I think also the idea of proportional response is something that doesn't exist in international law. It's a very vague terminology. Like, well, what is proportionate? Like, is it proportionate in terms of death counts? Is it proportionate in terms of needs? I think it's one of the. I think the reason for it existing is really just so it can be um, twisted depending on who's doing it. Someone said he's. Oh, someone linked the chat, linked the speech.
Where do we see it?
You said see the chat, but I don't see it.
Can you send it in WhatsApp?
Send it to our WhatsApp. We'll see it.
Yeah. So BCF Ireland says you could tell them to live as equals. So this to me just comes off as more of a platitude than anything else. So what does that mean, right? What does that look like? Because tell me a situation where we can take down all walls and not have an even deadlier situation, right? Obviously, if we could all live as equals, that's the optimal scenario. But in practice, what does that look like? Most of activism is really just these platitudes and the occupation and the siege and apartheid. Great, yeah. Obviously, let's end all. But in practice, what does that look like? How do we do that in a way that doesn't cause even more deaths of Israelis? Sky News Live has it. We're seeing Sky News Live. Because something that's important to understand, and it's a tough pill to swallow.
Here. It's right now in. It's currently going, but it's in Arabic, so we'll have to wait.
Is it in Arabic?
Yeah. Oh, here, I got it.
Yeah, you want to share screen? So real quick, like something that people need to understand, that Israeli security comes at the expense of Palestinian freedom.
Cool. We are today here to remember those martyrs who are the martyrs of Hezbollah, or martyrs who fell for defending our country against Israel, and
seems a little low energy
for and civilian martyrs, and in the hands of the Zionists and their partners. We get to, first of all, to the families of the martyrs from the Lebanese and Palestinians, and we tell them their family, the martyrs,
This translator should be fired.
that they got this medal from the God, and they have given their loved one in between their families, and such as their brother's husband or son, and I hope the God will accept from the all to all families of martyrs in Gaza Strip and West Bank, all those who have given martyrs in this war, in this flood, Aqsa flood, and which is open in many fronts, more than one front. And the martyrs, and after a few days we will have the Day of Martyrs. Those martyrs, those who won big wins, and we are going to recite some verses of Quran in their name for them and for their families. And to make sure that they went to the place where they supposed to, and no, and God says, Allah says on those who fell for the God, then they will go to heaven, and those who
Yeah, this translator, 3 out of 10 at best.
I don't know. He just stopped talking. But just a quick note.
I'm trying not to
this
laugh
doesn't.
at the serious moment, but that translation is hard.
Just based on a general sense of what's being said. Of course, the translation isn't that great, probably.
If you're joining us now, we are listening to the leader of.
But the interesting thing is that the general way in which he's speaking isn't a declaration of war. Like he's not. It's not a declaration the way he's speaking.
That's what I was thinking as well.
There's a very distinct body language that you always see when they're declaring war or they're about to something aggressive, and you don't see this here. He just seems to be talking about the situation and showcasing support.
That was my take. That it's very much
it is the first
body language and energy, more so of showing solidarity and not a declaration.
One sec.
So yeah.
October the 7th. Let's see if we can go back in and hear him again.
The fighters and the victims and the martyrs of the civilians, children, women, and elderly, and they are moving to the other world where the prophets and others are waiting for them, and no dictatorship, no American dictatorship, no Zionist will not prevent them. That's how we are looking at our martyrs and their families as well. And we are saying that your family members are fighting this war on the earth. If we wanted to look for for a war with all the rights in the field of humanitarian one, on the ethically, morally, and religiously. You can't find a war the one which you fight against the Zionists in Palestine. You can't find any other war on the basis of humanity and morality, and this is the clearest and the best way to fight for the God, that everybody should know this. Today we are talking to the families of the martyrs, that a whole world heard them and hold their position. That the families, they have given their loved one to the God, and that's our real force, and our real force is this belief and this duty in believing in our cause.
What happened?
Oh, did I accidentally?
So we do have like an Arab-speaking friend that says that his tone in Arabic does sound a lot more aggressive, and at the very least like a sermon. And you could actually tell once you hear his voice coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, the words are not what you would expect. I'm putting it back. Sorry, I accidentally went out.
Or a child comes out and the rubble and their house were demolished, and all they gave everything for the resistance and for the residents of Palestine, and that is our main force, and that is the nation which are prepared for everything, and they have to their and their beliefs and their steadfast staying. And we also want to say to the West Bank, and we're everywhere, and my brothers and sisters, today I'm going to concentrate my speech on what had happened. We would like to explain our position, and we distribute the duties. Let's speak about Lebanese environment, and we'll talk about the rest about later. We at the beginning we have to send our gratitude to those who supported and helped, and even internationally nations who.
So we're going to be bringing on a Palestinian friend of ours who can translate and give a much better understanding of what's being said. So far, according to him, and also from our takes, this seems a lot more like a sermon and not a declaration of war. Of course, the general things. Also, remember, from what we understood, there isn't much support in Lebanon for them to get involved in this war. And so that's something that's important to realize. I think that the translator does a really bad job at doing it justice. That's something that Adar said. He's definitely getting fired after this. I guess I'll do it until he comes back on.
Of the Palestinian people for decades in the past, but the situations in the last few years, it was very hard, particularly with particularly with this cabinet, which is very right wing, and there are four ways are very. And first with the prisoners. There are thousands of Palestinians are in the prison of Israel, and some of them they spent most of their lives in the prisons, and this right wing government, and with their stupid minister, their lives are, human rights is very bad. And the second case is the Quds in Jerusalem, and particularly the last few weeks when it led to the Al-Aqsa flood in Thalithan and the siege on Gaza. There are 20 years the siege is continuous. There are more than 2 million people that are living in a very small area, and they have very hard life. And the fourth, and the danger, and the latest dangers which threatens the West Bank, and where's this radical government, where just they are killing our people daily basis, and they're arresting on daily basis.
Did you, was that intentional? Supposedly there's a better one on Al Jazeera. Is that what you got?
Jihadi operation of October 7th, Al-Aqsa Typhoon.
Yeah, this is a much better one.
There we go. That's a good translator.
The operation was triggered by the fighters of Izzuddin al-Qassam, supported by the fighters of other Palestinian resistance factions in Gaza Strip. This operation, so this is the first point in the backdrop of the event. This glorious, blessed, large-scale operation was 100% Palestinian in terms of decision and execution, 100% Palestinian. Even the Palestinians have kept it secret, even from their fellow Palestinian resistance factions in Gaza, let alone other resistance factions across the resistance axis. That element of secrecy was a linchpin to this emphatic success of the operation. It came as a surprise, shocking surprise, unlike what is assumed by many, namely those who would like to drive a wedge among us.
He seems to be trying to isolate responsibility for the October 7th.
That type of confidentiality and secrecy adopted by Al-Qassam did not anger us here. It was a requirement for the success of the operation. And this operation has no bearing on any decision or move to be taken by any other faction along the resistance axis. This move taken by Hamas have stamped the true identity of the battle, and also precluded all the enemies and hypocrites to raise any false claims, especially when they speak about the relations between the regional resistance factions. At any point of time when there is a battle, they start to speak about the Iranian nuclear program, the US-Iran negotiations to serve the Iranian interests or agenda in the region. False claims. Yet, Al-Aqsa Typhoon was 100% Palestinian in terms of decision and execution. The secrecy in which the entire operation was shrouded proves that it is a totally Palestinian cause for the sake of Palestine and the people of Palestine, and it has no relation at all to any international or regional issue. This operation also proves what we have been reiterating over the past years. Let the foe and friend understand. Let it be understood by all enemies and friends that the decisions of the resistance factions is in the hands of their own leader. Since the Iranian Revolution, from Khomeini to Khamenei, have always been openly adopting and supporting resistance factions in Lebanon, Palestine, and in the region. However, they do not exercise any form of authority or mandate on these factions or in their command. And what happened with the Al-Aqsa Typhoon proves this fact. And those who are willing to interpret what is taking place today and what's going to take place in the future, that the true decision makers are the leaders of the resistance themselves to the service of their top and true cause. Ladies and gentlemen, the third issue I would like to speak about, the repercussions of this event. What's been happening on the battlefield, I believe you are all closely following. No doubt, it was a brave, heroic, creative, perfect, massive operation, commended at all fronts and at all levels. What are the repercussions of this glorious operation? It caused a seismic shake, an earthquake in terms of security, military, politics, diplomatic, even psychological. It has very profound strategic, existential repercussions that will continue to have bearing on the presence of this Zionist entity and its future. No matter what the enemy's government has done over the past days, and no matter what they will do over the coming days, cannot change the impacts and repercussions of Al-Aqsa Typhoon strategically and historically on this Zionist entity and the future of the conflict in this region. This operation has lifted the lid and uncovered many facts. However, speaking of the repercussions, the glorious repercussions and effects of this glorious operation requires hours, if not days. However, what's more important, it has exposed the frailty, weakness, and total fragility of Israel, more frail than a spider's web. I have read some reports on the Israeli media that the Israelis themselves have come now to believe, more than someone, meaning myself. The Israelis have come to believe that Israel is more frail than a spider's web.
He always uses this example,
This
by the way,
fact
in every speech.
was established and cemented by Al-Aqsa Typhoon operation. The United States administration, represented in their president, ministers, state secretaries, and even top brass, to support this shaking entity in order to get some breathe, get back on its feet again, and to restore some action and to take the initiative, which he has until now. And they had it to provide all forms of protection and support. The swift response by the United States to support and back Israel has proven how failing Israel is. From the very first days of Al-Aqsa Typhoon operation against the totally besieged Gaza Strip, the Israeli government was in a dire need for the U.S. fleet to navigate to the Mediterranean for military and psychological support. Where is your fleet? Where is your warplanes? Where is the invincible army of Israel, the mightiest in the region? Where is all that? The United States hurriedly dispatched warplane carriers and other pieces of their naval fleet. The U.S. top brass generals, military experts running to the area to open the strategic weapon depots for the Israelis. From the very first days, Israel demanded new weapons, new missiles from the United States. From the very first day, Israel demanded $10 billion. Is it a strong state? Is it an invincible army, as claimed? A state that requires that amount of U.S. and Western support? Heads of state, heads of governments, defense ministers, top brass generals flocking from all over the world to provide moral support. This is what Al-Aqsa Typhoon has caused to this frail entity. These are some of the profound impacts of Al-Aqsa Typhoon operation. All these must be evaluated and analyzed in detail, which we don't have time to. Yet, we must understand that all the sacrifices offered in Gaza, West Bank, and at all fronts are really worthy. All these sacrifices, all these achievements, outcomes, and repercussions deserve all these sacrifices simply for the reason that it paved a way for a new slate in our conflict with the Israeli enemy. It paved the way for many countries and nations within the region. There was and there is no other option. The other option is silence, waiting for more oppression, more siege, more death, more killing. This was the other option. That's why we can say that the decision was wise, brave, prudent, and worthy of all these sacrifices. The next point, how was the enemy's response to Al-Aqsa Typhoon operation? From the very first hours, it was clear that the enemy was lost, stray. You know, it's a Sabbath day, and this was a perfect timing by the commander of Al-Qassam. It seemed that they have had a long night, drunkards, not only in Gaza envelope, but also Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. It took them hours to come out.
He's just going over
They
the
came
exact same
out
things
in
over and over.
historical state,
It's almost
angry,
like he feels like he needs to
in
speak,
an
you know?
insane fashion.
Yeah, it's like he's just
That's
repeating the
why
same points like multiple
when they
times.
had it to recapture the settlement within Gaza envelope, they perpetrated massacres against the Israeli settlers, not Hamas. Now we start to hear and read reports and investigations providing evidence that it was the Israelis who perpetrated the killing among the Israeli settlers. And in the near future, when the dust settles, the whole world would come to know that all those killed within Gaza envelope were killed by the Israeli army itself, who was acting insanely. In the wake of this big seismic event, it seems that the successive government of Israel do not learn the lesson. Unlike we always hear that Israel is learning the lesson, here they are. They never learn from past lessons or experiences, especially their experiment or experience with their wars against resistance factions in Lebanon and Palestine. What is taking place today took place in the past with some differences. In July 2006, in the successive wars with Gaza, at a different scale and different levels. Among the gravest mistakes committed by the enemy in the past, and it is taking place now, is setting high goals that they cannot achieve. Setting high goals they cannot reach.
This feels like
They set
Palestinian
as
version of
top
Hezbollah.
goal to annihilate Hamas, the whole of Hamas. Then, speaking of toppling the government of Hamas, then eliminating the leaders of Hamas, then the military wing of Hamas. Now they are claiming to have as a top goal to annihilate Hamas. And when they started to wake up, they now speak about another goal, to bring home the captives. Those who have had a long experience with different resistance factions in Palestine and Lebanon throughout history, have you seen at any point of time, the Israelis capable of releasing their captives without negotiations? Never. What happened in Lebanon 2006? They declared as the goal is to annihilate, to wipe out Hezbollah They were backed by the United States and the whole West, including Arab states. Their goal at that time was to wipe out Hezbollah from Lebanon and to bring home the 2 Israeli captives. The war extended for 33 days. Neither Hezbollah was wiped out, nor their 2 captives released without negotiations. The same thing is taking place today in Gaza, yet with a difference, and the difference is the massive pogrom, the massive amount of destructions and killing. In July war, 1,150 houses leveled, thousands of fallen martyrs. Yet, the resistance fighters at all fronts, backed by the Lebanese people, stood their ground. The enemy, step by step, gave up on his goals. What's taking place in Gaza Strip today proves the stupidity and impotency of the Israelis. They are wreaking killing among civilian Palestinians in Gaza. Most of those killed are women and children. The majority of the victims are civilians. Churches, mosques, school buildings, even hospitals are not spared. Everything is legitimized. Entire neighborhoods are wiped out. School buildings, places of worship, and the whole world is standing by watching. Does this require an invincible army? For a whole month, the Israelis failed to produce a single military achievement. And when they started the ground operation, the same scenario of July war in Lebanon, the random shelling, displacement of citizens, and the killing and the falling of thousands of martyrs could not bring the resistance to their knees. Then, at that time, the Israelis started their ground operation, and to them, our fighters stood up to them, and the whole battle was followed by the whole world. The same thing is repeated in Gaza. The Israelis are trying to launch a ground operation in order to sell to the whole world that they are launching a large-scale ground operation. Even the limited moves taken by them were met by the bravery of the Palestinian resistance. We have all watched this resistance fighter approaching and placing the explosive on the top of the tank. How do you think the Israeli troops will be able to fight among those brave fighters? Nothing but confusion, fear, and frailty. What the Israelis are good at over the past 75 years is nothing but perpetrating pogroms, massacres, with the aim of exercising pressure on the leaders of the resistance to wave the white flag. And I believe the scenes we have been witnessing every day, every hour, every minute, women, men, children crawling from underneath the rubble, crying out and saying, "We are holding our ground. We are standing tall. The end of this battle will be nothing but your defeat. By killing innocent civilians, you will not achieve anything. All what's taking place in Gaza Strip, seen by the whole world, reveals and proves once again the brutal, barbaric nature of the Zionist regime of Israel, the usurping, occupying force that was planted in our region in Palestine on the grounds of the ill-fated Balfour Declaration to feed on wars in the region, targeting Palestine and the Palestinian people, followed by the Egyptians, Lebanese, and all the peoples of the region. After all these long years, as they tried to convince the whole world that this entity is a state of rule of law, humanity, democracy, this is all proven false. We have witnessed victims, men and women, innocent civilians, the children of Gaza have unmasked the truth of this barbaric regime, backed by the Western media, who are trying to convince our peoples to remain silent or even normalize with the Zionist entity. This also reveals the direct responsibility and liability of the United States. Also, the U.S. hypocrisy. From day one, Biden claims to have spoken to the Israelis about humanitarian issues, civilians, all false claims. For a month, Gaza and the Gazans have been reeling under the brunt of barbaric, ferocious, brutal, ruthless, merciless aerial bombardments. They falsely claimed that Hamas beheaded babies, and they failed to produce a single piece of evidence. Yet they remain silent against the images of thousands of babies and children torn apart in Gaza as a result of the Israeli missiles.
I mean,
now
this just sounds like he's giving a summary of what he saw on
the
Twitter.
whole
Like, I
West
don't understand why
claiming and preaching about democracy, humanity, rule of law. It's nothing but hypocrisy. It is a lynch law. We are living in a jungle. We all must establish this fact. The United States is totally responsible for the war raging in Gaza against unarmed, defenseless people. It is the United States that vetoes condemnation of Israel in the Security Council. It's the United States that stands on the way of a ceasefire in Gaza. It is the United States proving once again, as described by Khomeini, it is the greatest Satan, the great devil. From Hiroshima to Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, Palestine, the United States must be held liable and then penalized for all what it has been perpetrating against our people and the peoples of the region. And there comes the decision by the Islamic resistance movement in Iraq to launch offenses against the American bases in Iraq and Syria, considering that the United States is controlling the war in Gaza, and it is the United States that must pay the price for the crimes perpetrated by the Israelis in Gaza and by the Americans in Iraq and elsewhere. It is a wise decision by the resistance fighters in Iraq, prudent, blissful, and wise decision. Yesterday also we heard about new measures against the occupied Palestinian territories, and this will be revealed on the coming days and hours. And here we salute all those noble men, noble fighters who are lending a helping hand to their fellow resistance fighters. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the duty of every free nobleman in this world to establish and reiterate these facts in the public opinion warfare led by the Western media that is falsifying and misinforming the public. We started to see the public opinion shifting as the whole world witness women, defenseless women and children torn apart. This is the least we can do in this battle, the battle of right against false, the battle against ferociousness, brutality, and barbarism, represented by the United States and Israel. Supporting Gaza and the Gazans is the least humane requirement. Those who took out to the street in support, who rally, those who donate, let alone those who fight, are under the duty towards Gaza and Gazans. Those who remain silent must reconsider about their faith if they claim to be religious, and their honor if they claim to be honorable. Each and every one, all and each, must live up to his own responsibility. Speaking of which, in 1948, when the whole world abandoned the Palestinian people, this Zionist entity came to existence and pushed, and the people of Palestine and the peoples of the region have paid the price of the establishment of this Zionist regime. Not only the Palestinians, the Egyptians, the Syrians, the Jordanians, Lebanese have also paid the price. Lebanon has taken a bigger toll as a result of the existence of this usurping, occupying Zionist regime. This is an established fact. And again, today, what is taking place in Gaza is not a war like the others. It is not a battle like those of the past. It is not an event like those of the past. It is a decisive battle, historical one. What is after this battle is never like what is before. This dictates that each and one shoulders his own responsibility. Speaking of which, we must set the near-term goals, which we should all work to achieve. The first goal we should work for day and night is to end the war on Gaza. The second one is to enable Gaza, the resistance fight in Gaza, and particularly Hamas, to triumph. These are the two short-term goals. We should not lose sight of these two goals. The first, to cease the war, cease the aggression on the grounds of humanitarian, ethical, religious, lawful grounds, which are unquestionable. The second one is to the interest of everyone. It is to the interest of the Palestinian in the first place. It is to the interest also, as some are misinforming the public. Some are claiming that if Gaza triumph means that Iran will triumph. If Gaza triumphs, it means that Muslim Brotherhood will triumph. This is false. The victory of Gaza means the victory of the Palestinian people, the victory of the Palestinian detainees, the Church of Holy Sepulchre, as well as Al-Aqsa Mosque. It is a triumph to all the peoples of the region. There is no time to delve in details, yet it is sufficient to indicate that the victory of Gaza is to the interest of Egypt. It is to the interest of Jordan. It is to the interest of Syria. And before all that, it is a national patriotic interest of Lebanon. And I believe this has been demonstrated enough over the past days. What if the opposite? What if Israel triumphs? What if resistance is defeated? What are the repercussions of the regional states on Palestine and on Lebanon in terms of security, politics, grassroots, popular level, and demographic level? Now, Israel is throwing threats to Lebanon and the Lebanese people. They are sinking in Gazan sands, yet darting threats against Lebanon and Lebanese. Using what? The bloods of Gazan women and children by the destruction of mosques and churches in Gaza. Speaking of responsibility, it is the responsibility of every free nobleman in this world. Everyone, all and each, should shoulder his own. Arab and Muslim states must spare no effort to at least put an end to the war. If you are prevented from acting, listen to your religion, your conscience, your values. You should all work for the top prime goal to end. Condemnation statements are not enough. Civil relations. Recall ambassadors. We cannot condemn at the same time supply gas, oil, and food supplies to Israel.
I mean, he's not declaring war.
In the past wars, the Arab and Muslim states calling for cutting off oil supplies to the United States.
Boycotting
Now,
Israel.
we are calling on the Arab and Muslim states
Good job,
to cut
Nasrallah,
off
taking the
oil and
nonviolent
gas and food
versus
supplies
I appreciate
from
you, know?
Israel.
Very surprised.
Stop
that this is
your
the leader of
exports to
Hezbollah.
Israel. I have read some reports coming from Israel satirically saying that 22 Arab and Muslim states cannot deliver a single truck of supplies to Gaza or allow the departure of a single patient. Look how weak, impotent we are. Gazans are telling the whole Arab and Muslim countries, we are not asking for your arms, weapons, or fighters, but do you not have the least of honor or dignity to deliver some aids? Presidents, scholars, ministers, many high-level and top-notch officials, aren't they capable of going themselves, staging sit-in on the borderline with Gaza? They can turn the borderline as a platform to address the whole world. Here, I do not wish to label others as traitors or whatever. Yet, we should not fall in despair. We should continue to call on our brothers. We should continue to place responsibility on the responsible, hoping at a point of time the whole humanity will listen to the sound of reason and their conscience may wake up.
Okay.
Was that it? We're
That was a
done?
nice long-winded hour. Nothing revolutionary.
Oh, he's back?
The Islamic resistance in Iraq started to shoulder its responsibility towards what's going on. They announced that they are going to engage into new measures. Our honorable brothers in Yemen, Ansarullah, the Yemeni people, the Yemeni army, the patient, brave Yemeni people, against all the threats, Western and American, took a number of initiatives, launched drones and missiles. Even if dropped, at the end of the day, they will reach and they will hit their targets. They will reach Eilat, the south of Palestine, the Israeli army bases to the south of Israel. We salute our fellow resistance fighters. Yet, on our Lebanese front, some claim that we are about to engage in the war. I'm telling you, we have been engaged in this battle since October the 8th. We have been in this battle since October the 8th. The Islamic resistance in Lebanon started operation the very next day after Al-Aqsa typhoon. We had no knowledge, honestly speaking, like any other party of the world. We moved into a second phase. The very following day, operations were launched from Sheba Farms and the other surrounding hills, then extended all across the borderline with the occupied Palestine. You have and are still closely monitoring the details about the daily operations. What's taking place on our front is very important and significant. Those who claim that Hezbollah should engage swiftly on an all-out war with the enemy might see what's taking place on the border as minimal. But if we look at what's taking place on our border objectively, we will find it sizable. Yet, I assure you, this will not be the end. This will not be sufficient. What's taking place on our Lebanese front, it is, on one hand, unprecedented since 1948, the creation of this Zionist entity, and the presence of Israeli posts on our borders. And since the illegal occupation settlements on the north of the occupied Palestine on the borderline with Lebanon. Since October 8th, what's taken place since then is unprecedented since then, that all the Israeli positions from the sea to the heights of Sheba Farms and Kafr Shub to real under daily offensive operations, intensified operations, targeting these posts and what's in between, tanks, armored vehicles, drones, clusters of personnel, and above all, technical installations, which are the eyes and ears of Israel. Since October 8th, the resistance in Lebanon is engaged in a true, genuine battle that can only be felt by those on the southern borderline. It is a true battle, different from all those in the past, separate from all those engaged by Lebanon, be it 2002 or 2006. Totally distinct and different battle in terms of tools, tactics, strategies, weapons, tools, and even targets. That, and a living proof to this fact is the number of our fallen martyrs who opted to remain on the forefront. On Saturday, the 7th, immediately after Al-Aqsa Typhoon operation, the Israeli army started to bring back or retreat regular personnel from the borderline. Let me explain what are the achievements. When we speak about fallen martyrs on the Lebanese front, almost 57 fallen martyrs, including those of the Lebanese brigades, together with the fallen martyrs from Al-Qassam and Saraya al-Quds brigades in Lebanon, let alone the civilians. That number and that blood, we should know what's been achieved in order to know how to move forward. On the borderline from October 7th, the Israeli enemy started to pull out personnel from the borderline with Lebanon. Total moral collapse for Gaza and Gaza Strip that has been besieged for almost 20 years, very limited space. The Israeli army pulled out army personnel from West Bank, North occupied Palestine, and called them all towards the Gaza front. At the same time, they recalled or called the reservists. The operation that started to escalate up to that of yesterday, all these operations forced the Israeli enemy to maintain their personnel on the borderlines with Lebanon, if not deploy further reinforcement. Adding to that, the elite task force that was supposed to head towards Gaza front, they are now deployed on the Lebanese borderline. This means our operations on the borderline force the Israeli enemy to concentrate their personnel and forces and equipment on our borders, which we're supposed to deploy to Gaza. Some might claim that we are taking an adventure or gambling, yet it is worthy. Please, you just imagine if we restrict our action to rhetorics, statements of condemnation, then the Israeli enemy will deploy all its force towards Gaza. Now, I have very exact figures of the total number of Israeli personnel, armed units, machinery, equipment, weapons, yet I requested for a brief, easy to understand pieces of information. The Lebanese front is now forcing the Israelis to mass 1/3 of their entire army on our borderline. This is number one. The majority of this forces are the elite task force and regular personnel. Second, half of the Israeli naval capabilities are now anchored in opposite Haifa. Third, one quarter of the Air Force is dedicated to Lebanon. Half of their air defenses, the Iron Dome, etc., half of it, almost half of the air defenses is deployed around Lebanon. 1/3 of their all logistics were deployed to Lebanon. These are valid, accurate, exact numbers. I'm giving you easy to understand figures. Secondly, the displacement of tens of thousands of illegal settlers and evacuations of tens of thousands others. 43 illegal settlements were evacuated, and what is left now, nothing but army personnel, no more civilians. In the south, opposite Gaza, 58 illegal settlements were evacuated. All those evacuated from the south and north represent massive pressure economically, psychologically, and socially, and this will be a pressuring factor. A third issue, which is of no less importance, that the operations on the Lebanese borderline and Sheba farms have given rise to a state of fear and panic among the Israeli leadership, political and military, similarly to the Americans, which we will talk about later. This concern or fear that further escalation or an all-out war will exacerbate on this front, or they fear that the northern occupied Palestine front, the Israeli army, will fall into an all-out war. This is a very likely possibility. The Israelis are taking this into consideration, and it is part of their calculations. And this is reflected in all the rhetorics and statements made by the American, European, and even some Arab heads of state. That state of uncertainty, fear, and panic among the leaders of the enemy serve in two purposes. One, it causes our enemy to calculate their moves towards Lebanon. And here we speak about deterrence. We speak about genuine fear on the part of Israel. If in only one single operation against an Israeli post or an Israeli tank or a cluster of personnel on the borderline, they wouldn't have taken the brunt. Yet, today, the Israelis are taking all these blows, adjusting and calculating their moves very meticulously, simply for fear of the future. So I reiterate, our presence on the front, our operations and readiness, our daily operations on the front, cause our enemy to remain fearful, hesitant, and in panic. We have heard many statements from their ministers speaking about banking upon the entire support provided by the US and West to wage a war on Lebanon. I assure you, to the enemy, we say, if you think to assault Lebanon or take a preemptive strike against Lebanon, it will be the biggest act of foolness in the history of your existence. They think the Lebanese would fear of what they are witnessing taking place in Gaza. We have seen this since 1948, from Qana to Sabra and Shatila. On the contrary, the scenes we see in Gaza will turn us more resolved, more faithful to remain steadfast, defiant in resistance, and not to back or fall to our knees, no matter what the price is. The second most important issue, through this state of panic and uncertainty, the enemy must calculate their moves while acting in Gaza, and they are. These are some of the results of our operations in the south of Lebanon, let alone the amount of material and human losses suffered by the enemy over the past weeks. These operations in the south, the blood of our fallen martyrs, and the sacrifices by the fellow fighters and our honest, noble men who remain in the south, or those who are temporarily displaced, they are all sacrificing to this battle that is worthy of each sacrifice. It is an expression of our solidarity and support to Gaza and the Gazans by the noble blood of the fallen martyrs, by standing steadfast. We are doing all what we can to alleviate and lessen the pressure on them, as the enemy is acting insanely, militarily and politically. Here we come to the most important point. Let the world know. For weeks, communication, pressures, even from day one, if you start any operation and if you open a front in the south, all these American fleets have come for you. You will be shelled by the US warplanes. This was been told to us on October 8th. And in some details, when some Palestinian resistance fighters infiltrated from Lebanon, following the first operation by them, we received a threat that the US warplanes will bombard Lebanon. I assure you, many resistance fighters have infiltrated, and many will continue to infiltrate. The threats we receive will not change our position. Therefore, we started our operation on that front, and the future of this front, any escalation and any development of whatever nature are hinged on two things, nothing more: the development of events in Gaza. It is the first factor, the development of events in Gaza. That's why this front will devolve according to the nature of development in Gaza and what is required. The second factor that is in play is the conduct and the demeanor of the Zionist enemy towards Lebanon. And here, once again, I warn you not to go further, as many civilians have fallen as martyrs. And this will bring us to the same equation: a civilian for a civilian. Again, the demeanors of the enemy against Lebanon will be a factor in play. I am speaking openly, candidly, and at the same time with ambiguity, constructive ambiguity. All scenarios are open. All scenarios are open on our Lebanese southern front. I reiterate, all scenarios are open. All options are laid out, and we can adopt any at any point of time. We all together must be prepared, ready, and available to all these scenarios and options to come. To the Americans, the United States administration, I say, darting your threats on Lebanon and resistance in the region is pointless. Not the resistance movement or the resistance countries. It has reached a point that we received message that if you continue to launch operations in the south, it will not only bombard Lebanon, but would also bombard Iran. Can you imagine? To the Americans, I say, darting your threats on us in Lebanon will be pointless. Your naval fleets in the Mediterranean will not and cannot cause us to fear. To you, I openly and candidly say that your fleet that you are using as a threat, we have prepared for them what it takes. You, the Americans, remember your defeats in Lebanon, Iraq, Afghanistan, and your humiliating withdrawal from Afghanistan. Those who defeated you in Lebanon at the early 80s are still alive, backed and supported by their children and grandchildren. If the US and Western politics are calling for steering away from escalation, this cannot be achieved by threats against honest, noble resistance fighters defending the defenseless. The only course is to end the war on Gaza. Here it is. Israel, your servant, you, the Americans, are capable of ending the aggression on Gaza because it is you that you started. If you wish to steer away from a regional war, you must hurriedly act towards ending the aggression on Gaza. You, the Americans, are fully aware if an all-out war is broken, your fleet will be of no good. Your aerial warplanes will be pointless. You will pay a heavy price by your interests, your fleet, and your personnel. Now, today, the whole world, in the name of these spilled bloods, in the name of the defenseless civilians, in the name of churches, mosques, and hospitals, in the name of humanity, in the name of human values, virtues, the whole world is required to act genuinely and swiftly to end the Israeli aggression on Gaza. As the horizon is looming to our fellow Palestinian people and resistance fighters, I say, since the creation of the resistance fighter following the creation of the Israeli Zionist regime, we have been fighting a war of fortitude. We haven't reached a knockout victory. We still need time to be more realistic. We are winning victory by points, not knockout victory. This is what happened in 2000, 2002, and 2006 in Lebanon. And this is what happened by the Gazans, and similarly by the resistance fighter in West Bank, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Fortitude, patience, bravery. This is what we have, and this is our strength. That is what the enemy lacks. This is what the enemy wants. People, victims crawl from underneath the rubble and say, we all sacrifice to the service of the cause. Do you believe that this Israeli people that were collected from the corners of the world of diaspora, have you ever heard any of them saying that my blood, my beloved ones, and my home can be sacrificed for Israel? None. We should remain standing fast in resolve and fortitude to prevent the enemy from achieving its targets. We should all now work together to end the war and aggression on Gaza. Then we act for the resistance in Gaza to prevail. First of all, based on our firm conviction of the divine promise given to us by Almighty, the omnipotent Allah, that we will win victory. This is a promise, a divine promise given by Almighty Allah, the omnipotent, no matter what the sacrifice is. Yet we should be deservedly worthy of it. And this is proven by our sacrifices and our bloods. And personally speaking, and based on my personal experience with his Khamenei, who repeated more than one occasion that we all firmly believe in this divine promise, Gaza will triumph, Palestine will triumph, Palestine will prevail. He himself repeated the same words to us in July war, when there was no victory looming in the horizon. And to our fellow brothers in Gaza, despite all the sacrifice, to all the Palestinian people, all the resistance peoples of the region, all those whose hearts are shaken by the blood of the children of Gaza, our unity, patience, fortitude, and sacrifice we offer in blood to the service of the cause of God will be rewarded by nothing but emphatic victory. Today, as we honor and celebrate the memory of the fallen martyrs, we will meet soon to celebrate the victory of Gaza and the Gazans and resistance fighters in Gaza. And may God's peace and blessings be upon you all.
Is that it? Okay, let's
Hopefully.
wait a second, because
Hopefully.
he stopped talking
Gee-
before and then he started
Jeez
speaking again.
Louise.
I assure you, all options are open on the southern.
Oh, that aged me.
I think it's important to clarify for people who don't follow this stuff as much, and some of the comments made by Nasrallah sound way worse than they actually are. Almost everything that Nasrallah said in regards to that Israel will face a huge response if they attack us first, and that we stand by our brothers and we have been fighting. None of this is new. This is a very common point that is taken by Hezbollah. This is old news, so to speak. It's very common for them to say that in the event that Israel attacks Hezbollah first, then they will retaliate and potentially start a war. But this is nothing new. This is going over old remarks of his. The only thing of significance that I found in the entire speech personally was he kept on pushing the narrative that this was all the doing of the Hamas leadership. Iran wasn't involved. Hezbollah wasn't involved. None of the other Palestinian factions were involved. And this is most likely in direct. The reason I think that he's saying this so many times is I think that there is a lot of pressure on Iran, Hezbollah, and other groups regarding how much did they actually know about what was going to happen. And there might be internal pressures that we don't actually know about that are currently unfolding. And so they're trying to distance themselves from responsibility. But at the same time, they're also distancing the responsibility of escalation. He said, if I remember very clearly, that it is up to those who began the operation, those who led the fight, to lead it onward. Also, he never says that he's going to ramp up the actions against the state of Israel. We see very clearly that he's saying that we've been fighting the state of Israel since October 8th, which is true. They've been firing rockets into Israel from Syria and from southern Lebanon since October 8th. They've also been firing mortar shells. They've been firing drones. They've been firing anti-tank missiles into Israel. And they've caused casualties on the Israeli side. And Israel has only retaliated to these. Israel has, as far as we're aware in the media, has never preemptively hit any targets on the Lebanese side. They've only been reacting. And so it hasn't allowed for Hezbollah to escalate it in a legitimate manner, so to speak, that if Israel preemptively hits targets in Lebanon, then Hezbollah can say that they're attacking us and now we have to escalate. There's a chance that that's what they wanted. They wanted Israel to escalate the matter. But he is correct that by escalating and having tensions on the northern border, it does separate the forces of the Israeli military from being in the south, in the north, and in the West Bank. Israel has responded to this specific claim a number of times in the past few weeks, saying that we are ready for war wherever it begins, and all of our forces in the north are prepared. And so, honestly, the speech was very drawn out. A lot of it, as Adar was joking earlier, and also we were messaging each other just to not interrupt the speech, that it really felt just more, I think Adar will take from here, it felt more just like him, an advocate, a random American activist giving a speech, not the leader of an incredibly powerful militant group.
Yep. Great analysis. First, just some feedback, in an age with short attention spans, an age of TikTok and shorts and reels, you got to keep it short. You got to keep it simple. He could have gotten that message across in 15 minutes, and he went on for an hour and a half. So, Nasrallah, if by any chance you're watching this, just take that into consideration for next time. I would say the only new piece of information we got, in addition to what you shared about Iran and Hezbollah not being involved, it's that they don't plan on entering the war, which we weren't sure of. It seems like they don't want to. Which is good. And it seems some people in the comments are upset. And I know a lot of people around the world are upset because they wanted another front against Israel. But let's try to be realistic, okay? Every single conflict that Israel has been in has caused more deaths of those attacking Israel. Every single one. So the Jewish blood that you are yearning for, or the destruction of Israel that you're yearning for, is it worth the deaths of of more Lebanese and more Gazans? It's not. So those upset, you should be happy that it's not an escalation. We're not one step closer to World War III, and we're not going to have more needless bloodshed. I also saw that this stream, we do these streams on Facebook as well, but no one ever watches it on Facebook. We're primarily YouTube, but this one, the algorithm pushed out. So whoever's watching us for the first time, I see there's quite a lot. Welcome to the channel. Just a little bit about what we do here. Our goal on this channel is to really give a balanced coverage of everything going on, primarily relating to Israel and Palestine, but we do touch on other topics. And even more so, the goal here is to aid in the reconciliation process between Israelis and Palestinians. So if you're into this, you like what we're doing, we'd love to see you back. I'm going to drop a link to the Facebook to come subscribe on YouTube, because this is where we do most of our content. And if you're new here on YouTube, please subscribe if you like what we're doing, so you could tune in. We do a few live streams a week. And yeah, so I'm personally happy that there's no escalation. I'm tired. I'm tired from that speech. But I don't know. I think we could... I'm ready to wrap this live stream up, unless you have something else to say, Tal.
Nothing really on that regard. I think that, one sec, I can't see the channel. I think just as Adar said, I think that, talking about ceasefire stuff, a further escalation of the conflict with Hezbollah getting involved is not good for any civilians in this matter. A lot more civilians will die as a result. I think it's important to realize that, I'm happy that at the end of the day that the speech by Hezbollah wasn't a declaration of war, because Hezbollah getting involved in the conflict and now could also involve Americans. It could get other forces in the Middle East involved, and so it's better to not have more fronts build up. And for people who want the war to end, it's better to be pushing individuals to kind of like push Israel to go down the ceasefire route, which is a much more realistic thing in terms of pressure from international bodies and stuff like that. But asking for more escalation, for more conflict, only leads to more innocent people being killed. I think the speech was a letdown just in terms of what we expected to hear. I mean, they've built up the speech for quite a few weeks, but everything that Nasrallah said is something that I've seen in their official spokesperson accounts for the past few weeks. There was nothing new that he added, really. It also felt like he rambled a lot during the speech. He just randomly kept on saying, I saw these reports by the Israelis, and I saw them saying this about babies. It felt like he had, as I said earlier, that he was scrolling through Twitter, and then he just added things to his speech as he was watching things. It didn't feel like the leader of Hezbollah, of a really powerful militant organization that has access to a wider range of weapons that Israel does see as a threat to its northern borders. It sounded like a tiny group that, I mean, if you looked at the speech made by the Houthis and other militant groups that are currently fighting Israel, their speeches were very aggressive and talking about direct confrontation with the state of Israel. And Nasrallah didn't.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Tal. Yeah, you want to respond to a comment?
Thank you all for tuning in.
Yeah, just in terms of what we have coming up. So on Sunday evening, Jerusalem time, I don't remember the time. We're going to have Zach Corner and Zach Foster on, a Zionist and anti-Zionist Jew, debating what's going on. And then Monday or Tuesday, we're going to do a cringe meme review, which is kind of fun and lighthearted. There's so many cringe takes being had on Twitter and elsewhere. So if you have a meme you want debunked, or if you have a Twitter account or influencer you want us to debunk, send it over. You could find my contact information in the description. And yeah, with that, I'm sending everybody a lot of love. Hope you all stay safe. Keep your loved ones close. And we will see you tomorrow, or see you on Sunday.
Yeah, it was great. Great.